motion from way above. Got the music in me, baby, tell me why. Got the music in me, baby, tell me why. You've been locked in me forever and you just can't say goodbye. Kisses in the folds of the lovers wrapped in your arms. You've been hiding them in hollow pianos left in the dark. Got the music in you, baby, tell me why. Got the music in you, baby, tell me why. You've been locked in me forever and you just can't say goodbye. Your lips, my lips, apocalypse. Your lips, my lips, apocalypse. Go and sneak us through the river, flood is rising up on your knees. Oh, please, come out and haunt me. I know you want me. Come out and haunt me. Sharing all your secrets with each other since you were kids. Sleeping soundly with the locket that she gave you clutched in your fist. Got the music in me, baby, tell me why. Got the music in me, baby, tell me why. You've been locked in me forever and you just can't say goodbye. You've been locked in me forever and you just can't say goodbye. When you're all alone, I will reach for you. When you're feeling low, I will be there too.
The band is Cigarettes After Sex, live performance here in the Soundcheck studio of their song called Apocalypse. And that features Greg Gonzalez singing and playing the guitar, Randy Miller on bass, and Jacob Tomsky behind a very scaled-down version of our drum kit here in the Soundcheck studio. Greg, to you and the band, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
I should mention Philip Tubbs, your keyboard player, not here with us. Normally I would think that a lot of the ambient sound of this band would be coming off the keyboards, but you really use the guitar, the electric guitar, as a very ambient kind of tool, it seems.
I think it's kind of the keyboards and the guitar give it that sound, and I think the keyboards add more of a symphonic element, I think, to the band a bit. The guitars kind of give it this haze and a bit like in that kind of style or something like that. But
Right.
yeah,
So there's a real kind of cinematic noirish quality to this band, and you know that's I mean that song sounded like David Lynch needs to make a movie with that song.
that's great. Yeah.
So are you one of those people? If someone says who are your influences, are you as likely to list film directors as you are other musicians?
Yeah, definitely. Film was a big, huge influence actually in this band, especially just certain films, trying to kind of take what a film did with its mood and kind of bring that into a musical landscape for some reason. So if you ask me about it, I can kind of name these directors are as high as whatever musicians are kind of influential to the band.
Like who? Or what movies?
Yeah, well, I think especially there's a film called The Double Life of Veronique by Krzysztof Kozlowski, Polish director.
Yeah.
And that film, I think, really gave kind of, like, we did a song called Affection, and I was obsessed with that film when we did that song Affection. And I think I was kind of looking for the feeling that film had. It's really surreal but really beautiful, and it has this kind of autumnal kind of vibe to it a bit. And I think that was kind of what I thought we should do with Affection. And I think that kind of set the stage for the whole LP even.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one. There's plenty more. There's Antonioni did Lea Ventura, which is a big influence. And you said David Lynch. I think Blue Velvet was a huge one too.
Right.
And especially the soundtrack for Blue Velvet and the soundtrack for Twin Peaks. Those were huge influences on the sound. Just this very kind of 60s but surreal, very poppy but strange, really beautiful music. So those are all kind of big ones.
Right. And you mentioned Kieslowski, and some of his, some of the scores to his films are also very, they're almost kind of symphonic, but there's always something kind of twisted and weird happening.
Right, yeah.
Which, and even the name of this band, Cigarettes After Sex, has that kind of French new wave, nouvelle vague kind of.
Yeah, and those are big, like Eric Romer was a big influence too, French new wave style, and Truffaut with Jules and Jim and that kind of stuff. So all that factors into the band for sure and gives it a lot of its style.
So for someone who is so kind of visually oriented and so attuned to film and, the visual aspect, what was it like when The Handmaid's Tale came along and took that early song of yours and used it?
Right, that was just, it felt like, obviously we talked about the style coming from a lot of cinema, and when we showed the music to people, they said this would be perfect for a film or something like that, or like a show, obviously. So it just felt like it was totally natural. And even early on, we'd been asked to do some bigger shows that didn't quite go through, but this is the one that was the first big show that really happened, and I think really plugged people into it. And it seems like the way the scene is and everything, it really fit out. It really worked out beautifully too. So what I'm saying pretty much is that it felt really natural, like given that there's so many influences that come from cinema, that we would, start having our music in films and TV and things like that. And this ended up being the first big one.
So how does that work? Did you see the scene before they laid in the sound, or is it just like you watched it on TV like everybody else?
Right. This was honestly more on faith, where we all kind of looked at what the scene was going to be, and then I saw what the style of the show was, and I thought the show looked great, and I knew it had really great creators and really talented people involved with it. So it was kind of a leap of faith, saying like, I think they're going to do a great job with it, and it sounds like a great scene, so let's just see what happens, based on all those factors. Yeah.
Well, now that song, Nothing's Gonna Hurt You Baby, I mentioned before, that's from the first EP, so that's now 5 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And you've just released your first LP, so you've been taking your time, obviously, in putting this first full length together.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that just comes from being very picky with things. And we had honestly tried many attempts at making this record and making other records, and they just, at the end of the day, we'd listen to them and they just weren't good enough. And finally it felt like we figured out how to nail the style and nail everything, it kind of presented the right way.
Yeah.
And when we got that, then it's felt like, okay, everything's locked in now, we can just write it through. But it took a long time to kind of get that, to get like, here's what it's going to be, here's the way to do it.
It's interesting because you make it sound very considered and deliberate, that this wasn't a sound that just kind of happened, that you had an idea and you spent time kind of getting there.
Right. And honestly, what happened at first was, it was an accident, almost the way it happened. It was an experiment. which is the first record we did, Nothing's Gonna Hurt You, and that first EP is an experiment in a stairway. And it was...
literally in the stairway of a building because it's very reverberant.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I would just walk through that stairway when I was going to class at my university there, and just thought it had this beautiful sound to it, really echoey, really strange, and I just thought, let's get a band in here and see what it sounds like. And then that happened, and it was great, and I knew it was something special, but every time I tried to follow it up, that stuff wasn't good enough, and so I was kind of mystified as to how it even happened. It was like a total accident. And then I moved to New York, and I met, the rest of the players, and we were trying other methods to do it. But what I found was we had to kind of go back to that initial spontaneous attempt to get back to this sound, and it had a lot to do with spontaneity and things like that. And so that just took a while. It took a while to rediscover that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of time in between where I didn't really know how it happened. It was kind of just random.
It's funny to think that you have to continue to try for spontaneity, that it, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's part of the creative process is, you have to kind of, it doesn't just happen. You need to be kind of in a place where it can happen for you or with you.
You aim for spontaneity, but you have to kind of put some sort of plan together that works out, or else it's just going to be a big mess.
We're speaking with Greg Gonzalez and listening to the band Cigarettes After Sex here in the Soundcheck studio. They're about to head off on another leg of the world tour, sold-out performances October 7th and 8th here in New York at the Bowery Ballroom, sold out in L.A., in Dublin, in London. So we're really glad you guys could play for us this afternoon. You want to do Sunsets next?
Yeah, sure.
All right, here's another live work from Cigarettes After Sex.
Sunsets we wander through a foreign town. Strangely, there's somebody else around. Say you open your dress and show me your toes on the swing set at the old playground. And when you go away, I still see you, with sunlight on your face in the rear view.
Cigarettes After Sex is the band from Brooklyn, led by Greg Gonzalez singing and playing guitar, Randy Miller on bass, Jacob Tomsky behind the drums, and a song called Sunsets with a Z.
Yes.
Is that the hip-hop version?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it just looked better that way. I don't know what it was, yeah. But
Okay.
I guess you could you could say that.
You've probably heard the saying, they're all love songs, that
Right.
all songs. In this band's case, that seems to be literally true.
It is true, and that's a reaction to seeing records that would have some love songs on it, but it would kind of always deviate to something else. And I thought it's kind of rare where you just find a record that's just all about love. There's no sort of, all right, here's some other off-topic thing now. And I just wanted that. I just wanted like a really powerful record that just all about romance the whole time through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you talked about before about, kind of sculpting this sound.
Mm-hmm.
Do you play the guitar in standard tuning?
Yeah, it's not like a Joni Mitchell thing or anything.
Okay.
Anything special.
Because, a lot of guitarists would go to alternate tunings to get those kind of open ringing strings. Yeah. You're getting that sound in standard tuning. How is that just the effects? Is that?
Yeah, it's totally just the pedals, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tried things like that before, but it felt like it sounded too complicated when I tried it with stuff like this. This was like just kind of this pure kind of sound. And I think it's mostly, just that reverb and the echo, kind of that's what makes things ring out, and you get these kind of tones that blend together and things like that, yeah.
So the first Cigarettes After Sex EP was 2012, as we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And the sound has been, once you got it, the sound has been pretty consistent. Is there a proto Cigarettes After Sex? Is there like a hardcore version of this band from the early days?
Yeah, there's actually many. Because what I would do before was, the band started in 2008, and it had nothing to do with the sound now almost. It was, if you can believe it, it was based more on really electropop 80s kind of stuff.
Oh, really?
The lyrics were confessional, and the lyrics were still very sexual and personal, but the music was really this kind of dance pop that had more to do with like New Order or Erasure or like even 80s Madonna. What I would do though is I would put a record out, and then no one would care about it, and so I would just tear it down and restart. And so it was kind of like I was doing drafts of something to finally get to something final in 2012.
What was your singing like back in those days? Because you're a soft-spoken guy.
Yeah.
You sing barely above a whisper. I'm somehow having trouble imagining
Right.
this in a kind of new wave Madonna context.
Yeah, well, that was the voice. I would sing in those voices before. It was a little more singing out and stuff like that because it made sense with the music. But as time went on, it felt like this was my natural state to sing more in this style, and kind of everything is this, and this is like my actual voice. The stuff I was in before, I felt like was kind of just practicing or kind of searching around. But I did sit like that, and there's even a record that people listen to now that's kind of become canonized with us that was right before the 2012 EP that has some songs people actually like that we started playing live now. And I sing a bit different on that in case anyone's, interested to hear that, in case you wanted to hear that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But to go back to the 80s, while that was happening, while you had New Order and, Madonna and Depeche Mode and all the rest, there was also a band like the Cocteau Twins.
Yes.
Which, did this ethereal ambient music that would be hard to define as plain old rock and roll.
Mm.
And then later you get to Julie Cruz with
Yeah.
the David Lynch films and bands like Luna. There's always been this kind of this other alternatives sort of rock music.
Yeah, the ethereal kind of sounds. And even going back to, and we were inspired too by even some of that doo-wop stuff is ethereal. Like like the flamingos or the platters. Like there was kind of this sound, like celestial sound going on. Or even, like Johnny Mathis records or something would have this orchestral sound that, it sounded like the stars or something. It was. So I think that's kind of always there. It just changes hands as time goes on or something like that.
Yeah.
We're definitely coming from that style, though, over the years. And obviously Cocteau Twins, Julie Cruz are big influences. But, some of those, Smoke Is In Your Eyes or something is just as big of an influence.
Well, the Flamingos version of I Only Have Eyes for You.
Yeah, exactly.
Johnny Mathis's version of Stardust. The production,
Exactly.
is just like, what planet did this drop from?
Exactly, and that's really where we're coming from. And those are just great love songs, too, and just really pure, amazing love songs, which we're definitely trying to that's our style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the album is also called Cigarettes After Sex, the debut LP, full length from the band of that name. I mentioned that you guys are, continuing your globe-trotting tour. You were in East Asia recently.
Yes.
Beijing, Shanghai, Jakarta. I mean, are the audiences appreciably different there than they are here?
I would say that maybe here, we're about to embark on a U.S. tour, and we'll kind of get a bigger sense of how the fans are now, because we kind of started off very early in the U.S. and didn't really see the fanaticism that we've seen in Europe and Asia. But going back to that, it's Europe and Asia have this, the fans there are very, very intense and very loving, and the music is very emotional to them. And many times we played Kuala Lumpur in May, and the entire time the audience basically sang like every word of every song.
Wow.
And after the show, we'll meet many fans too, and just, fans that'll be basically in tears about how much the music meant to them. So it's pretty amazing, just to see that.
So you don't find a language barrier?
Not at all, no.
Yeah.
Not at all with the music, no, not at all with our fans, yeah.
Well, let's hear some more music. You want to do Sweet next?
Sure.
All right. Once again, the band is Cigarettes After Sex, performing live on Soundcheck.
Watching the video that you sent me, the one where you're showering with wet hair dripping. You know that I'm obsessed with your body, but it's the way you smile does it for me. It's so sweet knowing that you love me, though we don't need to say to each other sweet. Knowing that I love you, running the fingers through your hair, it's so sweet. Watching the video where you're lying in your red lingerie, 10 times nightly. You know I think your skin's the perfect color, but it's always your eyes pull me under. It's so sweet knowing that you love me, though we don't need to say to each other sweet. Knowing that I love you, running the fingers through your hair, it's so sweet.
Once again, the band Cigarettes After Sex, live on Soundcheck with a song called Sweet. Greg, I'm going to assume I'm not the first person to tell you this, but the chord sequence in the chorus of that song, very strongly reminiscent of Starry, Starry Night, the Don McLean song about Vincent van Gogh.
It's a great song, yeah. Love that. Yeah, so it's a compliment. Yeah.
I mean, did you realize that when you wrote it, or?
I don't think I was thinking of that song, but it's just, you know, you kind of use changes, and you know that they've been used a million times almost.
Well, everything's been used.
Right, yeah. So just one of those things, but yeah, you know, kind of just felt like it was right for the song.
Well, we were talking before about how you spent, you know, a good chunk of time getting the sound of the band for the first LP. You've got the sound now. Does that mean it won't take 5 more years before the second?
It definitely won't. We've already started working out another record, basically. So I think now that we've kind of figured out what we're doing, you can use that to kind of keep things moving now and not take so much time. Mm-hmm. But it'll be the same thing. If we're not happy with anything, maybe it will take a while. Who knows? But we did a session in Spain over the summer that's probably going to lead to most of our second record. So hopefully it'll be out next year.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, lots of touring, lots of sold-out dates. October 7, 8 here in New York at the Bowery Ballroom. Glad to have you guys with us on Soundcheck today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, yeah. It's our pleasure.
This is Soundcheck.